The plot thickens. Tennessee and Virginia Attorney General's joint lawsuit against the NCAA. The NCAA is going to be toast by the end of this. More on your Thursday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen wherever you get your podcast. You can download it for free, and of course, subscribe and watch on YouTube as well. Shout out to everydayers for making the show what it is, and we'll continue to discuss the latest developments and the report from Sports Illustrated that Tennessee is under further NCAA investigation into name, image, and likeness and recruiting. Got a fun-filled show to get into today. I'm going to give you the latest developments and how Tennessee continues to gain support in this realm here in segment 1. Plus, we'll hear from Andy Staples from his show, a little cut-up I made about his stance on the Tennessee saga. Trey Wallace of Outkick.com will join the show in segment 2, and Adam Sparks of Knox News in segment number 3. Big shout out to FanDuel. You can make every moment more at FanDuel.com/lockedon to go ahead and get started. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so what has happened since last we spoke? Well, a couple of different things, okay? You had late on a Tuesday evening, you had Tom Mars, who is a very experienced lawyer who has gone head to toe with the NCAA many, many times. He's a guy, as you'll hear from in a moment from Trey Wallace in segment 2, that Tennessee has been very familiar with throughout their dealings between one another, going back, nearly a decade, probably plus. And that's Tom Mars, and he is representing Spire Sports Group, the collective, the volunteer club, and he put out a statement on Tuesday evening, kind of on his behalf of Spire Sports, and that statement said, quote, "In early 2022, independent of the University of Tennessee or anyone associated with its athletics program, Spire Sports entered into a mutual beneficial contractual relationship with Nico Iamaleava that involved a limited assignment of its NIL rights, no matter which school he chose to attend. Such representation agreements have become increasingly common. The parties agreed that their contractual rights and obligations would be governed by California law, which freely allows prospective college athletes to enter into such agreements." Sidebar, again, that's something in the last couple of years that's becoming more and more relevant. It's legal in the state of Tennessee now for high school athletes to engage in name, image, and likeness. California was one of the first states that allowed that, and you're seeing that more and more all over the country. So he's right, it's becoming more and more relevant in the college realm today. Back to the statement. Quote, "The commercial reasonableness of the agreement between Spire and Nico was evidenced by a recitation that Spire anticipated Nico would eventually be drafted by an NFL team. The agreement also specifically acknowledged the restrictions prohibiting the use of any school's or team's logo or insignia. The agreement required Spire to protect the value of Nico's NIL rights and specifically stated that nothing in the agreement constitutes any form of an inducement to athletes to enroll at any school and or join an athletic team. In short, the agreement was fully consent with the then existing NCAA NIL guidelines, in quotation marks, and had nothing to do with the recruitment of Nico to the University of Tennessee or any other school." Last paragraph here. Spire Sports and the Vol Club currently represent more than 100 college athletes and are proud to have helped them maximize their value with legal protected name, image, and likeness. So in short here, Tom Mars is the real deal, and he is speaking and representing Spire Sports, which is the agency. Volunteer Club is the collective. It's an umbrella of Spire Sports, but that's important to remember here. The Volunteer Club is the collective. Spire Sports is the agency. And that's pretty much saying when you're seeing the New York Times report that all this is centering around quarterback Nico Iamaleava and a flight on a private jet during the recruitment process, this is pretty much saying, hey, state of California allows high school athletes to profit off the name, image, and likeness. Spire Sports, an agency, okay, had a client relationship with Nico Iamaleava. And therefore, if, it's essentially no different than your employer paying you to go do a certain job task is kind of how I would, me doing this podcast, I get compensated to do it. There's no difference there. So again, at the time, there was no regulation in terms of that being an infraction, an infraction. But with the retroactively trying to go back and punish teams at the NCAA when they announced that in May of 2022, you can see why that is kind of a big story. But according to the report from Tom Mars, who the statement that he put out is he will represent Spire Sports Group, it was a client. It was a client relationship, essentially. So that happened on Tuesday, all right? You had Governor Bill Lee, governor of the state of Tennessee, put out a statement, quote, "The University of Tennessee has been nothing but forthcoming with the NCAA, and I thank Chancellor Donde Plowman for taking the stand on behalf of all universities and student athletes. It's time for the NCAA to establish clear rules in the interest of the student athletes rather than try to retroactively enforce ever-changing name, image, and likeness guidance." That was a statement from Governor Bill Lee on Wednesday morning. And you also had Danny White, the next big domino that kind of fell there. Marsha Blackburn, the senator who represents Tennessee, she also put out her a tweet, a statement supporting the University of Tennessee. The big news is from Wednesday that you had the Tennessee Attorney General filing a lawsuit against the NCAA, and you knew that was going to come, right? Not only is Tennessee doing it, but joining up with the Commonwealth of Virginia, and being the state of Virginia, and they are suing the NCAA. And again, we knew this was going to come. This is a quote from a joint statement from the Attorney General at Tennessee and Virginia. Quote, "The state of Tennessee and the Commonwealth of Virginia bring the antitrust case against the National Collegiate Athletic Association. The NCAA has started enforcing rules that unfairly restrict how athletes can commercially use their name, image, and likeness, better known as NIL, at a critical juncture in the recruiting calendar. These anti-competitive restrictions violate the Sherman Act, harm the states and the welfare of their athletes, and should be declared unlawful and enjoined." Again, that was what was filed from the Tennessee and Virginia Attorney General. So we knew that was going to happen. Florida should be next because the University of Florida is under current investigation. Florida State's already reached a settlement. Miami's being poked around a little bit. How many other states are going to file lawsuits from their attorney generals? I think that this could be just the tip of the iceberg. Danny White came out and thanked that for happening on Wednesday. Danny White, Tennessee's athletic director. He came out, he quote tweeted the tweet that the Tennessee Attorney General put out there. He said, "I appreciate the action of Tennessee AG Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti for standing up for the right of student athletes. At Tennessee, we're always going to work to support our student athletes' rights and give them the tools needed to succeed on and off the field. That is what strong leadership looks like." So again, you're getting a statement put out by Tom Mars, who's very well known in the legal world, representing Spire Sports Group. Governor Bill Lee chimes in on it. Marsha Blackburn, a senator, chimes in on it. You got the Attorney General for Tennessee and Virginia jointly suing the NCAA. Danny White speaking out on top of that. Tennessee continues to gain support and gain support and gain support after the reported. And it's confirmed. It's not just reported anymore. It's confirmed that the NCAA is opening an investigation on Tennessee. Before we get into Trey Wallace of Outkick.com, I want to play a short clip. This is from Andy Staples on 3, the Andy Staples Show, on how this is bad news for the NCAA. Give this a listen.
This is bad for the NCAA, and I get it. I understand why the enforcement staff is trying to do this. They have to justify their existence in their paychecks somehow, because if you follow the letter of a lot of the state NIL laws, there's no reason for them to exist. So their paychecks go poof. So they got to try something. But this isn't going to work, because what you're going to have is some of the more powerful schools fighting back. And if enough schools fight back, and if enough schools feel like they're being targeted, they're going to just go in and say, we're the members here. We're going to change the rules, and we might change the rules to make you go away. So they've got to be pretty careful here. One more thing from Donde Plowman. It is intellectually dishonest for the NCAA staff to issue guidelines that say a third-party collective or business may meet with prospective student athletes, discuss NIL, even enter into a contract with prospective student athletes, but at the same time say that the collective may not engage in conversations that would be of a recruiting nature. Any discussion about NIL might factor into a prospective student athlete's decision to attend an institution. This creates an inherently unworkable situation, and everyone knows it. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is what I said, where these rules can't actually exist with the current state laws and the current environment. They cannot exist, because you can't say that you can't use NIL to attract an athlete to pick a particular school, because how else are you going to use it? How else is it going to work? These guys have value. We at On3, we have a whole ranking that determines how valuable they are to schools, not just our NIL value, but our recruiting rankings. There's clearly a market for it, and there's nothing the NCAA can do about that. They can wish it was 5 years ago again, but it's not going to happen. That's never coming back. And so what you saw from Tennessee, I think, is an opening salvo. If the NCAA is going to keep going after schools for NIL violations, it's just going to get attacked by the schools themselves. And by the way, the schools are their members. So this is where, if you piss off enough of them, again, they can turn around and legislate you out of existence. So you got to be pretty careful here if you're the NCAA. I think this Tennessee thing might just be the tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg. And, we kind of mentioned that on yesterday's show a little bit here today. That's Andy Staples' show on 3, video courtesy of all those guys, and some good stuff there. We'll hear more from Andy Staples as the week goes on. Want to get into a couple interviews that I had, pre-recorded. What does this mean in the grand scheme of things, but what does this mean specifically for Tennessee in the now? We're going to talk with Trey Wallace and Adam Sparks when we come back. So just hang on tight. We got a fun-filled Locked On Vols right here on a Thursday. Stay tuned. Happy Super Bowl week to all who celebrate from FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, not only are you getting to watch a good football game, the biggest event of the year, you got football fans, you got non-football fans, you got Taylor Swift fans. Everybody's going to come together and watch that game, watch the show, eat some good food, drink some beer, and if you're like me, hopefully we're going to be putting some coin in our pocket, finishing off the football season with a W. All right, you've got so many different ways you can bet on Super Bowl 58, but at FanDuel also has bets for which player will score the first touchdown, how many points will be scored, first quarter spreads. You got individual prop bets on length of the national anthem, coin toss, heads or tails, what color Gatorade is going to be thrown on, that's going to be doused on the winning coach. All that and more is over at FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get in on all that action today as well. If you're a new customer, join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet is $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We got more to come. Trey Wallace of Outkick.com will join us when we return. It was Tuesday, little after noon, I guess, and Sports Illustrated kind of broke the news that, NCAA is investigating it at Tennessee again. A couple hours later, Donde Plowman, fires back. It's all about name, image, and likeness. Since then, you've had the attorney generals, for Virginia and for Tennessee jointly filing a lawsuit. You've got senators speaking out, governors speaking out. What do you make of all this, man? It's a pretty big deal.
So I think we had all kind of heard that the NCAA was kind of snooping around a little bit, asking about not just at Tennessee, but at other schools as well. Florida, we already know, Florida State. There's other schools out there that are being investigated right now. But when it came to Tennessee, and it came to, I think, the timeline of everything, like you kind of said, when it started with, okay, I think the NCAA was putting it out through your own sources in their own way. Okay, here's how we can get this story out there. Let's see how Tennessee responds. And the fact that Tennessee had a statement ready to go, and a long statement ready to go the day that they actually met with the enforcement staff, I think that says a lot. I think Tennessee knew going in, okay, this is what they're alleging that we did. So how can we get out in front of this? It's almost like a PR battle. And what we saw out of Tennessee was Donde Plowman going scorched earth. And then it's like, in this lawsuit that came out, I've been working on this for over a month. So I know it's new to the public, not new to some of the folks behind the scenes and putting this together. Even Tennessee's legal counsel, the state attorney general is taking advice from the legal counsel and so forth. So I look at it as a huge day for college athletics, period. It's not just college football we're talking about. We're talking, basketball, baseball, women's basketball, track and field, you name it. So the fact that we got to this point and the fact that it's the college athletics world is rallying behind Tennessee, which is crazy to even think of, I think that goes to show you how big a deal this really is. And, they want the TRO enacted, temporary restraining order enacted the day before signing day in February. So this is all coming very, very quick. And I expect something to happen within the next 2 weeks regarding this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's, Tennessee still at the time of this recording does not have a notice of allegations. That would kind of be the next thing to see,
Correct.
Which infractions, how many level 1, level 2 and all that. Tennessee's done this song and dance before. And I think everybody listening and watching this podcast here, the show, would agree that it's really neat to see the combined efforts and combating that PR war that you're kind of talking about. But I think everybody's more concerned in, hey, Trey, what's this mean for Tennessee right now? This could drag out. This could be a big thing for college football. But what does this mean for Nico Iamaleava and Tennessee in 2024?
I think this means that there's going to be some scrutiny surrounding the Tennessee football program in the athletic department. Yes, the lawsuit helps in a sense of public relations. It helped, but they've still got moves to make with the lawsuit. For the time being, I don't think the reporting is stopping when it comes to Tennessee and what the NCAA is alleging that they did. The next step, you talked about it, notice of allegations is the next step. They have an informal notice of inquiry, Tennessee does right now, which lays out everything. And if you went back and you looked at Donde Plowman's statement, you read it, she was telling you, or their legal counsel, whoever, they were telling you what the NCAA is alleging Tennessee did. You just had to read between the lines a little bit.
Yeah.
And so she figured out a way around it, which was smart. She laid out what the NCAA is saying. So I think the enforcement staff is going to continue coming after Tennessee. I would expect now that Tennessee, I don't know if embarrass is the right word, the NCAA, but clap back at them. I would expect the NCAA to move pretty quick when it comes to a notice of allegations in regard to this. Again, this is not new for the folks on campus at Tennessee. They've been interviewing players, the NCAA has, for months now. And we're not just talking about football either. So I look at it overall and I think, okay, what's the end game? The end game to me is the NCAA is going to try to get their flesh, but can they get their flesh before a court rules on this case? And also at the same time, is it going to be 3 months down the road, Eric, where we're sitting here trying to figure out, okay, what's the NCAA going to do? Well, wait a minute. We've got this over here, this court ruling. Now you got the NCAA on this side. It's just going to be a battle, man. And I think a lot of folks are prepared for it. And I would expect other schools in other states, maybe other states is the right way to put it, but through other schools to potentially join in on the lawsuit or at the same time file their own lawsuit against the NCAA, and this thing just stacks up.
Something you and I spoke about, the day before this recording when we were just chatting, on the phone, talk about reading between the lines. And it certainly looks like the NCAA, one of those infractions is going to be a lack of institutional control. Tennessee was able to skirt away from a postseason bowl ban, this last time. And the way Donde Plowman kind of, put it out there, she's like, how in the world can you praise us, parade us around the country and say that we did everything correctly? This is how you should do it. But then say, essentially, there's a failure to monitor, a failure to lack of institutional control. Can Tennessee get by again unscathed if that is one of the level 1 infractions?
So that's the interesting topic of all of this is, what was it, 6-7 months ago, Tennessee officials are in a hotel room, in Louisville? I think it was Louisville. I'm forgetting it right now. But they were sitting there hashing out the penalties of what they would be. And they skirted by the lack of institutional control. Now, is the NCAA, do they want to get embarrassed or have the runaround put on them and Tennessee somehow escapes a lack of institutional control again? I don't think so. I think the NCAA is out for blood when it comes to NIL. The problem is I don't know what kind of leg they have to stand on when it comes to different states, different rules, and whatnot. But there could be a problem. I don't know. I've heard of boosters getting in trouble. You have to disassociate with boosters and whatnot. I don't know. This probably is the first time that I've seen the NCAA go after a school for what a collective allegedly did. And that's where this thing, to me, it's very interesting, because how are they going to punish Tennessee for something that they allege Spire Sports Group did? And I'm not saying they did or they didn't do anything, but they're putting a third party out there. So that's the interesting part of this to me. And so the NCAA, if they are throwing lack of institutional control at Donde, Plowman, and everybody that was in that meeting on Monday, you can bet they're going to try to see that through. Now, it all depends on, how much more evidence do they need? Do they have enough already? Can they throw that notice out there, which would be a really quick notice? Because honestly, this investigation kind of got started about 4 or 5 months ago, which is not long after they agreed to the penalties in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's going to get very wild. I think you're going to see stuff from the NCAA. Prepare yourself, Tennessee fans. You're going to see stuff from the NCAA. That either two things: either A, they put out, or B, somebody puts out for them, and then Tennessee's going to have to respond. And I think Tennessee being open and willing to respond the way that they did on Monday, I think that they will, every step of the way, have a response for what's coming or what has already came out.
Really great stuff there from Trey Wallace, Outkick.com, down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. I have a couple of other questions that I asked him. Hopefully we'll play it on tomorrow's show. I'm also going to put this full interview up there on the YouTube channel, so check that out. And hopefully on the audio channels as well. But really, really good stuff there from Trey Wallace. Hey, when we come back, I'm going to talk with Adam Sparks of Knox News, get his take on all that and more. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. In the grand scheme of things, kind of what do you make of all this? All right, I mean, it's NCAA's been poking around campus for a little while. Not just with football. They've talked to basketball players. They've talked to some others as well. SI report came out and kind of broke that news the other day. And then Donde Plowman's, fires back, and she, stood her ground on Wednesday as well. And talking with the student newspaper over there. And you've got senators, speaking out on behalf of Tennessee, governors. You've got attorneys, Tom Mars, representing Spire Sports Group. All this is kind of, it goes to show you that this has all been ready to roll for quite some time, just dotting the T's and crossing the, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But it's been kind of wild to see all this kind of come together in a span of a little over 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think my take is this is not nothing. I think what I got a lot from Tennessee fans was initially was a little bit of panic, mostly around Nico. Football, just quick fears there. And then I think that subsided pretty quickly. And as Tennessee, really as Donde Plowman's letter came out, I think there was more of a settling down. And a lot of Tennessee fans that I talked to late in the afternoon yesterday were kind of like, well, this is okay. It's going to blow over. It looks like Tennessee's got it under control. They're going to take NCAA to court if they need to. So I think I've kind of experienced different extremes on that. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think Tennessee fans should panic over this. I do think they should be concerned, though, because reading between the lines, I think Tennessee has some reasonable concerns. If Tennessee thought this was a nothing burger, Donde Plowman wouldn't have come out so aggressively. She's trying to nip this thing in the bud. She's trying to get ahead of it. And I think if she just thought this would just come and go and be nothing, I think she wouldn't have gone with the vinegar. She went with honey and with NCAA in the Pruitt investigation. She's going with vinegar now, or napalm, or gasoline, or something. So let's let this play out, I guess, is my take. But I do think there's at least should be some reasonable concern. And if you stack this on top of the Pruitt stuff, completely separate, but Tennessee did avoid the lack of institutional control in that one. When you stack back-to-back cases up, you're always afraid that the first one could hurt you in the second one.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, the bigger battle, if you will, fighting against the NCAA for, rights of name, image, and likeness, and what's unconstitutional and all that type of stuff. I mean, but really, when you channel it in for Tennessee, you read between those lines from what Donde Plowman put out the other day. I mean, it sounds like one of those infractions, those level 1 infractions, is going to be a lack of institutional control, because she pretty much says, how in the world could you parade us around and say that we're the model citizens and we did it all right, and then less than 6 months later say that we lack that control? And so and again, I'm not anybody that is super in the know on this type of stuff, but I mean, how in the world is Tennessee going to get by twice without a postseason bowl ban or something like that when it comes to lack of institutional control? That would be where my biggest fear is in this whole thing, more than anything, for the immediate impact and how this affects Tennessee football.
Yeah, one thing on Tennessee's side, and we saw this during the Pruitt case, is that the NCAA supposedly is trying to shy away from using postseason bans.
Yeah,
now, you can see them making an exception, again, if you're stacking two cases on top of another right back to back like this. Yeah, I think institutional control's on the table. Otherwise, Donde wouldn't have mentioned it in her letter. It's a concern. That's the one that jumped out to me, because that's the only thing that could get you to a postseason ban. I wonder in some of this if it seems to me, if you look at the Florida State case and the Florida case that's ongoing, and now Tennessee, and you've heard as well as I have, there's going to be more after this in the SEC and other Power 5 conferences. Like there's a list of NILs they're going after. I wonder if the target, rightly or wrongly, is as much the collectives as it is the athletes or the schools. I thought Donde Plowman sort of threaded a needle pretty well there of standing beside the NIL collective, standing beside Spire, but also having enough distance between the university and the collective, which you need if you're going to make the case that that what goes on between a collective and an athlete that's their business, and it doesn't have to be tied to the university. That's their best approach to this. But yeah, the lack of institutional control is what you have to be afraid of. That's for sure.
Yeah, and again, the question's been out there: will there ever be another postseason ban in any sports from the NCAA? Because they are trying to shy away from that. But when you have two lack of institutional controls in just less than a year, essentially, that makes you wonder. We'll see kind of how this plays out. You mentioned it's more or less looking like the NCAA is going after the collective, and that's how I see this, right? The NCAA is going after Spire Sports, okay? And Mike Wilson, I know both you guys have written about it over at Knox News. There's a flight that's in question. It's reported on by the New York Times. I would assume they got that from the NCAA. That's my opinion. And the question is, was he essentially, early in 2022, was he a client of Spire Sports? And if he was, and Spire paid for the flight, then technically that's not breaking the recruiting rules. However, if you're going to look at it from a retroactive standpoint, it gets all kind of fuzzy. So it's the NCAA saying, going back in May of 2022, saying we're going to go back the last 10 months and we're going to look into all these retroactive, activities, and we're going to pop you for that. That's kind of what Tennessee's fighting right now. It feels like an uphill battle for the NCAA. It does. But in the same sense, Adam, they got to show that they're still an entity, right? They got to show that the paychecks are still coming in. I feel like they're going to be taking their losses. They've already taken some losses, but they're going to keep swinging, and that's kind of what this is.
They have to justify their existence. Yep. And that's what they've been trying to do the last few years. And at this era, I think they could sort of fade back and just let the checks keep coming in, similar to how like the NFL commissioner does. I don't have power, but you guys pay me, so I'm going to hang around and not ruffle feathers. They could do it that way, or they could flex their muscle and try to get back some of the power that they've lost. They're trying to do the latter with this. And I don't know how that's going to end, because Tennessee has a lot of support behind it. That's for sure. It was funny, as soon as this went down, I contacted the Attorney General, which has now filed a lawsuit. And I contacted his people and said, hey, this is going on. Any chance you could weigh in? And the response I got was, absolutely, we're ready to go. So, the pieces were in place for sure for this to go. I'll be curious to see how much like that, the New York Times article, the flight and all that associated with Nico, if that's a small part of this or if that's the big part of this. He was the poster child of NIL early on. He got one of those large lucrative deals reportedly. And, the NCAA is targeting those players and are targeting those recruiting classes. If you were a high profile part of NIL because your whole recruiting class or a specific athlete, they're going to try to come after you again retroactively.
Solid stuff there from Adam Sparks of Knox News, Tennessee beat reporter for Knox News, and of course he's an investigative reporter as well. And that was part of the interview with Adam Sparks. I'll put the just like Trey's, I'll put the full interview up there on the YouTube channel and hopefully on the audio channels as well. All right, guys, we're again just kind of getting started. We're trying to cover this NCAA investigation into Tennessee from every different angle, what this could mean, big picture, college football in general, the future of collectives, all that and more. Plus, what does this mean for Tennessee right now? As I asked both those gentlemen there, and you heard their responses. We'll continue to break it down on Friday's show, plus any more latest developments that are out there, and we will get you set for Tennessee and Kentucky on Saturday, a big-time basketball game up at Rupp Arena. Appreciate you guys for being here. Shout out everydayers as always. This is Locked On Vols.